Hey folks, this is Ron with On Fire Concerts, and this is our April Artist Interview of the Month. We have a country music great on the line with us this morning, and Mr. Eddy Raven. How are you this morning, Eddie?
I'm good, Ron. You're doing okay, I guess.
Oh yeah, and well, I'm glad it's finally warmed up around here a little bit in the Middle Tennessee area.
Yeah, a little less rain, thank goodness.
That's true. Eddie, we wanted just to share a little, history with our followers about your career, and I don't know if you know this or not, but I do some promotions in the Middle Tennessee area. Mm-hmm. We do a lot in a little place called Bell Buckle, and we've had a number of people ask about you up there. So
there's a lady that used to run our fan clubs from there.
Oh, from Bell Buckle?
Mm-hmm.
That's a neat. I mean, I fell in love with that place a few years ago, and we do monthly shows there almost. And I think a good friend of yours is there pretty regular for us, Ronnie McDowell.
Oh yeah, Ronnie's a great guy.
Oh, he's amazing, and he has said he fell in love with Bell Buckle. But we do, we've had a lot of people there, and we definitely going to see about getting you up there. So. We wanted just to go over a little bit of your career for our fans and see what's happening new with you and so forth. So I guess the first question that you probably get asked quite a bit when you do these interviews is, when did you know that you wanted to go into music, and who were the early influences in your life?
Well, my dad was a guitar player, not for a living, but he actually played guitar for a guy named Rex Griffin, who, had Little Red Wagon and Last Letter. And when I was just a little kid, he did he played with him, played acoustic guitar with him. But that wasn't his livelihood, but he did that for a little while, off and on. And he influenced me to a degree in those early years because that's who you're around, and he showed me two chords. He showed me D and he showed me A, and he said, "Okay, go get them." And so he was the early influence. And my grandmother's family were from South Louisiana. My dad was from South Georgia, but my grandmother's family, the Landrys and Broussards and all that, and Don's Seafood was one of the Landry restaurants. They went on to become a lot bigger, Tillman's Fertitta bought a lot of the restaurants, but the family still owns some of them. But he actually met my mother while she was working at Don's Seafood in Lafayette, and he and the Landry boys, which was Willie, Don, and Ashby, were big buddies. They'd go out. Boxing was a big deal for them. They'd go out and watch the boxing matches, and then they'd go to some bar and try them out,
So try the moves out.
Yeah, that. But yeah, we did that, and first place I can remember singing was sitting up on the bar at Don's Seafood in Lafayette, and I was young. I must have been 3 or 4. I just barely remember it, but my dad had me singing, and they'd give me money. And I figured out, this ain't a bad deal. So that was the first part, and like I said, my dad, there was always some music and songs around the house, and because when he was a truck driver basically, and when he got back in, he'd play to get the guitar out. And I got my first one when I was 11 years old. It was for me, and started trying to play it and do this, and realized that I couldn't play anybody else's songs, so I decided I need to write some songs that I could play. To match the two chords I knew, and that's kind of where
that was easier than learning more chords.
You got that right, and it worked out, and I cut my first record when I was, and we sang all the while. We sang in the churches and sang wherever my dad was, wanted to go play and sing, and he'd bring me, and but cut my first record in Brunswick, Georgia, at a radio station, I think WMOG or something like that, what it was, and I was 16 and cut that, of course, and it didn't, it wasn't. It did. However, 5 or 6 years ago, it became. They called it. They put it out in England as a rock and roll record, and I mean, I said, wow. But anyway, that was at that point 16, and we moved back to.
Yeah, that's, I didn't realize, you don't think about the years, I guess, but, if I'm not wrong on this, that your first recording was, around 62, which would have been 57 years ago or something.
Yeah,
and
sure.
And that's amazing because, there's got to be, you wonder how blessed you are to be able to do something you love to do for 57 years.
Yeah, you are, and it's a gift. I mean, you it's a gift to do it. I just we were living in South Georgia at that time in Baxley, and or Metter or Baxley when I cut the first record. Drove down to Brunswick and did it. There was a guy that worked on the railroad, and he was a conductor, and he heard a little radio show that I had at 16 in Baxley, and he sent his cousin up there to talk me into coming there and cutting a record with him, and I did. But then after that, we moved back to Louisiana where my mom's people were, and that's when things really changed. I graduated from high school, and I was going back to finish up a deal in Georgia. Had to go cut one more song for the guy, and went back and did that, and came on back to Louisiana, and that's when I signed with a guy named Carol Rashew at La Louisiane Records, and he had a little local studio there. We cut Dale and Grace, I'm Leaving It Up to You. We cut Dr. John. We cut a lot of the local people, and that's where I learned what was going on in the world with music. And Bobby Charles was my hero coming up. He lived down the road from me, and he kind of took a liking to me, and Bobby wrote "See You Later, Alligator," "Walking to New Orleans," "Don't Know Why I Love You But I Do," "I'm Just the Jealous Kind." Great songwriter, and he cut one of my songs in the studio, and it became a big record locally called "Big Boys Cry," and that was in '65, I think. Well, I guess about 3 years ago, Elvis Costello recorded that same song as far as.
Well, that song wasn't Big Boys. Did that? That was the number one, was it not?
It was the number one, in Lafayette in that area for Bobby Charles. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And, it got a lot of recognition there in that studio because we cut a bunch of people. A guy named Gigi Shin, who I recorded and wrote songs for. He became lead singer for a group called Chase out of Chicago, and a guy named Jerry LaCroix, who also cut stuff on as a writer and all. He went on to be lead singer for Rare Earth, and a guy named John Smith was in that group. He went on to be a saxophone player for Boz Scaggs and Toto. So I was influenced by a whole lot of that, and my dad was a blues guitar player, loved all that, so those things were good. And Jimmy Newman heard some Cajun stuff I had done, and said, let's go to Nashville. Let me take you there and sign you up for something. And Jimmy brought me over to Wesley Rose at Acuff Rose, and I wrote Country Green for Don Gibson and Touch the Morning and Back in the Country for Acuff, and I Don't Want to Talk It Over for Connie Smith, a whole bunch of records, and
right.
Good Morning Country Rain for Jenny C. Riley, and did a lot of writing. And then Don Gant wanted to sign me to ABC when he took over that label when they established it in Nashville, and so Don and I cut records together, and then the rest went from Don over to I think we went to probably Monument and Ken Stiltz's company, and then I went to Elektra and Capitol and RCA. So
right. Well,
cut a lot of records.
You've had, I believe, as far as you recording, you've had like 8 number ones and 14 top 10s and 25 or so top 100s, and that's just impressive.
Well,
and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but your first number one was I've Got Mexico in somewhere around 1984 or so.
I think that's right. Correct. It was. That was our first number one. I think we had some, some success along the way, but that was the first one.
Right.
I should have called, opened a lot of doors, and Who You Doing in California. But
I was about to say those two. One of my questions I was going to ask you is, well, those two are one of my favorite songs of yours.
Well, thank you.
It's a toss-up between Who You Know in California and I Should Have Called. But I mean, you hear people say, the artists that we speak with and so forth, that, they say some songs you get inspiration from something in your life, or some songs sometimes just come to you, out of the blue. Did I've Got Mexico, did that have any specific meaning that came to you, or did it just one of them that just popped up?
Well, the first line in the song explains it. I just got tired of that same old job, tired of fighting that freeway mob. I was stuck on the highway going home, and that hit me. Those circumstances, all you have to do is, like Boudleaux Bryant told me, it's up there. You just reach and grab one. When it knocks on your door, when it whistles at you, grab it. And that's what that song was, and that was a quick song after,
That is true. Of the songs that you have recorded, of all the songs you've recorded, which is your favorite?
Boy, they're all, that's kind of all like kids, they're all special, and they're all a little different. I Should Have Called is very important in Mexico, of course, because it was first number one, but were it not for California and I Should Have Called, it'd have been a lot harder to get a number one with Mexico, because with that, I Should Have Called established that sound with that Strata guitar sound, Strat, and Reggie Young and I were in the studio recording it, and Bowen was producing us, and Reggie and Bowen said, "Hey, everybody take a break, but Eddie and Reggie, and y'all figure out where you want to go with this, because I don't hear it this way." And so Bob Ray was playing bass, and Bob said, "Well, I want to stay too." So and we sat down, and I told Reggie what we wanted, and Reggie, the greatest guitar player ever in the studio, and I so sad to lose him. But I said, what we need is it needs to feel like down in Jamaica they got a lot. And I said, there's going to be a little hole in there, and Reggie, you need to come up with a riff if you got something special. He said, I got exactly what I've been saving for. This is perfect for what I want, what I've been saving. He went out and got that Stratocaster guitar out there out of his box of guitars in the studio, and came back in, and it worked. And I got a phone call from Jimmy Bowen the next that night after the session, and he said, "Well, you got a hit." I said, "Really? What are you talking?" Because we did 4 songs. He says, "That I Should Have Called song." He said, "Every player on the session has called me and asked for a copy." He said, "And every time they do that proves you got a hit." And sure enough, he did, and it became a big record for me. But also, I got a phone call, and the guy says, I said, "Hello," and he said, "Eddie, it's George." And I said, "George who?" He said, "The Possum." I said, "Oh," he said, "I just want to call you and tell you I cut one of your old songs." I said, "Well, which one was it?" He said, "That song about I Should Have Called You." I said, "Wow." And he did, man. He did a great job on it. And we were out in Reno playing one place, and he was playing the Peppermill, and they sent a car to pick me up because George wanted me to sing the song with him on his show. He had a show after mine was over. And I went up there and did it, and he said, "You know the words to this?" I said, "I know some of them." He said, "Well, I got see the words are right there on that teleprompter." And I said, "Well, okay, let's do it." And it was great. It was a thrill. I mean, I love George. I mean, he and I go back. I knew him from a lot longer, way back. And anyway, but
George, just real quick, him and Nancy.
Yeah.
My dad was 82. He was turned 82, and been in bed sick for a long time and Alzheimer's. But anyway, long story short, I asked Nancy one day if George might call him on his birthday, and you don't, as artists, there's no way possible artists can fulfill all requests, but George did, and those are just special moments with people like him.
Sure. Well, he was genuine. That's the thing that I've preached all my life, and I don't understand why some other artists don't realize that. I mean, I was so fortunate to be around a guy like Wesley Rose, who was all basic. He was a CPA originally, and Don Gant, who was all about the music and all about that. Genuine people, and everybody I've been associated with through the years were pretty genuine, and Barry Beckett, I mean.
Well, it's a blessing because it's just, I do these shows and been doing them for a few years, well, quite a few years. But I've worked with, Gene Watson, Mickey Gilley on down the line, and, it's one of those things that everybody that I've worked with, and I'm as far as the world of promotion, I'm not no big company, it's me, and
yep.
But everybody's treated me, and you, I mean, like you taking time to do this for somebody that, it's just amazing. It's what, the people do that are genuine, and, it's like brings me to my next question, and I'll mention it, and I believe it was in 1982, you wrote, or the Oak Ridge Boys recorded Thank God for Kids.
Yeah.
I was with William Lee Golden the other day, or in March we did an interview with William Lee at his home.
Yeah.
And, he was saying how great of a song that was because it touches, it's about the best subject there are. And, but it's, that song is just amazing. And, the impact it's had to have on your career is amazing, I'm sure.
Yeah, I do it every show, and it's always the song. When I wrote the song, Don Gant was producing me at A Cup Rose, and I turned the song in, and I was going to record, and I played it. I did a rough copy and played it for Wesley and Don in the office, and Wesley said, that's the best song you're ever going to write. And I said, really? It was just something that I really felt, and being the oldest of 10 kids and growing up, and raising my brothers and sisters and being there with them and all, you learn a lot. But so Don and I went and recorded it at ABC, and they called me in the office and said, you got anything else you're going to record? I said, well, I don't know. I like this sounds, no, this ain't what country music people are looking for. So that was 10 years before we got 9 or 10 years before the Oaks cut it, and it was such a huge record quickly. I got in a disagreement with the label people because I thought it was a hit, and they wanted to take me away from Don Gant, who's my producer and my best friend, and I just said no. And if I didn't want to change producers, they didn't want to keep me on the label, and I said, well, I can always find another label, but Don Gant's my best friend, and he knows what we're doing, and I'll see you guys later if you just give me a release. And we did, and it took me almost 9 or 10 years to prove my point about the song being a hit song, and thank God for Bill and for the rest of the Oaks but I knew it was good because we did songwriter shows, and I could see people wiping their eyes and asking me to sing the song again and this and that,
Well, back in February, I interviewed Ricky Van Shelton, and he was saying something to the same effect about the label that he was with at one time. He said, what he got frustrated with about the labels were,
sure.
He said, as artists, we're out there on the stage and we can see what the fans respond to.
Sure.
He said, you tell the label that and they just ignore you.
Yeah. Well, I came back from Texas with a song that I knew was a hit, and there was a band I'd played with a house band down in right out of Houston, and the lead singer there had just recorded a song called Amarillo by Morning, and I knew it was a hit song, and I brought it back up to Bowen. Jimmy Bowen was producing me at the time, and he said, man, what do you hear here? I said, Jimmy, it's a hit song. All these people get out on the dance floor. When that song came on, people went crazy, and I loved the song. Thought it was great.
Yeah.
And, well, I don't know, blah blah. And my manager was Ken Stilts at the time, and Ken and I, he said, well, what do you like about it? And I told him the same story. People get out and dance. He said, well, hell, those people in Texas will dance to machine gun fire. I said, well, he laughed, and we wound up not cutting it. But the fact that I brought it to Bowen and them, that's how George, I know that they played it for George. Now, George may have already heard the song was going to cut it, but songs are just destined sometimes for certain people.
Right. Well, that's like, thank God for kids. I do not, I just don't believe there's a better group that could have took that song than the
No,
Oak
you're right.
Boys.
You are right.
It fit them just so perfectly,
Sure.
you know, and
Yep.
I just think that it's just, you know, that's got to be, you know, up in the top 3 of, in my view, of songs of all time. I mean, you know, that's just an amazing song. Like you said, it's what life is all about, you know.
Well,
and I believe it's a great song, and I don't believe you could have gotten anyone any better to record it, you know.
Well, Ron Chancey and Ronnie Gant at Acuff Rose, Ronnie was, and we heard that I was in Texas when I found out about it, and I called Ronnie. I said, "Man, the Oaks are looking for another song, a Christmas song." And I said, "Man, what about Thank God for Kids for those guys?" And Ronnie said, "Already done it. I already got it over to Chancey, and we are going to run it by them." And so when I got back into town, they had already decided the song, and they were going to take it. And I think it went gold in a week or a week and a half, and after that, it's just
just amazing.
Yeah, and I was coming back from a show we did in Lawrence, South Carolina, for a friend of mine, and Terry McMillan was playing drums for me, and there's just we were coming back, and that's when the inspiration hit me. You know, it was just one of those things that. One of those magic things that come along every now and then, and you know, they don't come very often. You don't get that very often. And Johnny Duncan was playing down the road from where we were, and he said, "Look, why don't we ride back together after my show? I'll stop by and I'll ride back with you." And I said, "Yeah, sure." So we stopped in the Smokies on the way back, and on this rest area, and these kids were sliding down the hill there, and Duncan said, "Man, look at those kids. They got so much energy. I used to have that kind of energy." And I said, "Yeah, thank God for kids." And he looked at me and said, "That's a hit song, write that." And so I added that to my list of my grocery bag. I think it was the Piggly Wiggly bag that I was writing on the back. Either that or Winn-Dixie, but I think it was the pig. And so did that, and like I said, after that it was when I got home and I stuck that brown piece of paper in a stack of other songs I had. And ideas I wanted to write, and my son came in and said, "What are you doing, Dad?" He was like 3.5, maybe 4, and I said, "I want to try to write a song." He said, "Can I help?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So he gets his little plastic guitar out and sits there and messes with the microphone, and about that time, Sesame Street came on, and you could hear the thing. He put the guitar down and he ran upstairs to listen to and watch Sesame Street. I looked over there and saw that one brown piece of paper, and I pulled it out, and it said, "Thank God for Kids." And it was a 15-minute song after that. It was so.
And it didn't take you long to write it, I bet, to my understanding, if I remember right.
That's exactly right. At 15 minutes, 20 minutes, it was done. And
that's you know, people don't realize, I think, or you know, of all the people, I mean, that you know. You've written for, I mean, not just country, but I mean, from rock to, you know, country and on down the line. I mean, Johnny Cash and George Jones, Lefty Frizzell, Gene Watson, and just, you know,
Waylon. I've just been so fortunate with it, and Waylon, you know, Waylon did an album on Sweet Mother Texas. We did. I mean, I've just been so fortunate and so blessed for. I hate to use that word over and over because everybody does, but it's the truth. It's what it is. It's much higher power pushes the pen. You just hold it and hang on. You know, I just. But I've been very fortunate about it, and years ago met a guy named Toby Keith. He came out and showed up at a show we were doing in Oklahoma at the university there, and he said, "Man, I just want to meet you." He said, "I'm a fan." He said, "I listened to you and Earl Thomas Conley." And,
Toby, you know, I think Toby will make it one of these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've gone out with him a few times. I go out with him when I can, and we've written 12 or 13 songs together, and I've got 2 on one album with him, and then 1 on another one, Cabo San Lucas, and Somewhere South of You, and another thing, Club Zydeco Moon, and 11 or 12 others that we haven't cut or released. I've done demos, and I got to get with him this end of May for the benefit he does for that charity that he sponsors in Oklahoma.
Right.
But yeah, fortunate.
I believe, I mean, aside from country, back in, I want to say 2017, you did a bluegrass project called All Grassed Up,
Yeah, yeah.
with Carolina Road.
Yeah, oh yeah. Lorraine Jordan was a fan, and I did that early combination bluegrass country album with her, and she called me after that, and she said, "Why don't we do a whole album of your songs?" I said, "Okay." So, because we'd had a few of them, I should have called, had been done bluegrass a few times. It really came off good, and Larry Stevenson did it, and and I've had a bunch of others. The Whites did Good Morning Country Rain, and so it was perfect. Got in there and did that, and she said, I said, "Well, have you got an idea? What are you going to call this album?" She said, "I don't know. You got any ideas?" I said, "Yeah, All Grassed Up." She said, "Oh, I love that." And so I called my buddy David Stewart out of up in I think he's in Montana. He owns a hotel up there, an old haunted hotel, and he's a great writer, and we had him in our publishing companies, so he started it, and I started the thing and sent him what I had, and next thing you know, we've written it. It came off so good. I mean, just a great album, great people to work with, and it's just music, I mean, it's all music, and that's where I'm geared at. I don't care about to me.
I tell people, I'm an old country school, but I started in Southern gospel promoting and stuff, and I listen to all kinds of music, all but rap. But and I don't have an issue with the music these days even. My issue comes when you're calling something what it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I got you exactly. I understand completely.
But I just have a couple more questions, and I won't hold you any longer today. I guess, you probably asked this a lot, but in your career, of all the achievements you've accomplished, what are you most proud of?
Well, that's a hard question to answer.
There's so many.
Yeah. Well, I've been so fortunate. The main thing is my mother. I never wanted to disappoint my mother, and I thank God for Kids. She loved that song when and she couldn't believe that I wrote a song about that it was done so well and did it, and the fact that she got to see the success before she died, I think that was so important to me, and I always just wanted to be a songwriter. I came to Nashville to be a songwriter, and when Acuff Rose signed me, that was great. I mean, that was the biggest thing in my life at the point, at that point. I would have to say probably writing Thank God for Kids and having the success, but the first number one with I Got Mexico was probably the most important part, a big part of the puzzle for my success as a writer artist, because that gave me the credibility that people like Haggard and Willie have, a writer artist. I didn't plan on being a writer artist, but I realized, wow, if you could do that and get lucky with that.
Well, you've written songs that had been recorded by Merle and Willie and different ones, and as you said, Merle and them are great songwriters too, and that has to be special when another great songwriter records one of your songs.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I was shocked one time. About Don Gibson cutting my songs. I could not believe how, what a great writer he was. Why would he want to do my songs,
Well, he had recorded, a couple or more, 3 or 4 years, didn't he?
Yeah, he probably did about 10 or 11, actually.
Yeah.
Touch the Morning, Good Morning Country Rain, Forever One Day at a Time. He did quite a few that did pretty well.
That's an accomplishment, and I mean, that's a compliment. That in and of itself that they other artists such as that want to record your music.
Well, Roy Orbison did too, and we have 2 unreleased masters on Roy that hopefully they'll be putting them out soon. That probably the only new things that were never released on him, a thing called Rita Joe and a thing called The Days That I Loved You that we cut at Acuff Rose. And so I'm waiting for those to come out, and we got an unreleased master that we have publishing on George Jones, So, I mean, wow,
That's just a lot going on. And the last thing, I guess, Eddie, is for the young songwriter, singer that's just getting into Nashville today, what kind of advice would you give them on their dreams of making it big in Nashville? Because it's got to be different now than it was, many years ago when you came.
Well, it's very different. There's so many non-music people in positions of authority that you don't have a Chet Atkins, you don't have those guys, Jimmy Bowen, those guys that take control and have had all the success. You got to listen to. You work hard, and probably the most important thing is to believe in yourself. And if you can't believe in yourself, chances of you making it are going to be rough. You need to believe in what you do, because it took me 9 or 10 years to get the Oaks record to work, and I didn't have a lot to do with it except sing it every chance I got, and things will come around if you believe in you, and that's what you got to do, because a lot of times you get the opportunity and they just brush you off, and so you got to try it with the next person, the next opportunity.
That's the thing I tell people, and the promotions and things we do, that my wife will tell people that I don't know the meaning of no. Well, my dad used to say, just because they say no now don't mean they'll say no next week.
Oh, he's exactly right. And I mean, another thing I told somebody, and I can't remember who it was now, a long time ago, an artist came to town, and it was a girl artist, and she showed up at a show with her and her boyfriend or her husband, and they said they were coming to Nashville. They wanted to know if I had any advice for them. And I said, you need to get you a daytime job to support your musical habit. Get you a regular job. And they said, really? I said, hey, it's what you got to do. You got to support your music habit, because it's what it is. It's a habit.
It is, it is. And, and like I said, there's just people that, in the music industry, unfortunately, that doesn't have the music experience, but they got the power.
That's right. Yep.
And Eddie, I just want to thank you for being with us today, and
you're
we
welcome.
appreciate it so much. And we definitely hope you'll keep on writing and singing, and people that want to find out about your music and want to buy your CDs and stuff, they can do it on your website at eddyraven.com.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we've got access to everything we've done, and so we pretty much control our stuff. So it'll come to us, and we'll take care of it. So
okay, and then we'll just say we're going to close by thanking you for being with us again, and for all the folks that listen to this, checking out our artist interview of the month, and I hope they'll stay updated on our updates at www.onfireconcerts.com, and subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss these interviews. And this is Ron, and we'll just sign off and say until next time, friends.
You got it. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate it, bud.
Thank you, Eddie, so much.
You're welcome. Be careful. It's the jungle out there.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.